Greetings! Today we're going to have a look at display technology, specifically as used in pinball machines, but this was pretty representative of how counter technology used to work. Of course, what we're looking at here is a machine. When they started making pinball machines, they used mechanical displays, as you can see here. They were score reels that each had a coil and just showed you the numbers in big readable format, which was extremely important on an amusement machine, but extremely important anywhere where you had a mechanical counter that humans should be able to read easily. These displays were kind of clunky, but they worked. They were pretty easy to read. But progress marched on. And all of this changed in about the mid-70s. In the mid-70s, solid-state pinballs began to appear, and the displays changed too. There were no longer mechanical displays, but electronic displays like these gas plasma displays you see. They were easy to read. They had the attention-getting orange color in them. And I think they fulfill the purpose rather well because they are easy to read and they fit the theme. I mean, once we entered the digital age, we didn't want to have to look at mechanical counters. And to demonstrate, we'll put it in test mode. That's what they all look like. If you see any flicker in the video, that is because of the shutter speed of the camera, which I can't change. But they are rock solid. And the problem with them is these gas plasma displays they do have a limited lifetime, especially on older machines which are left on 24/7. Voltage regulators stopped working and supplied them with too high of a voltage. The seals on the glass would fail, and we'll have a look at one display in detail right after this. But the seals sealing the glass together would fail. They would outgas, and digits would disappear, segments would burn, and now that they've pretty much become unobtainium, it's a solution. I mean, it was inevitable for a solution to be found, and the solution is here now, and we'll have a look and see what that solution is and do some comparisons and figure out if the solution is good enough. The way I'm handling this is because these displays are, at this point they're still available, but they're rather expensive. I mean, we're probably looking at $60 to $80 for a single glass tube, 6-digit glass tube. I'm generally a stickler for keeping a machine original, but if these displays start blowing up on me, it's going to be at first very expensive to replace them, and eventually you're not going to be able to replace them. So what I want to do is preserve these displays by not using them and storing them, and using a modern day replacement. And you be the judge once we do some comparisons if the new displays do justice to these, or if you definitely should stay with the original displays. Here's what the display looks like after removing it. You can see the glass tube over here. It is one tube with 6 digits that contains 6 7-segment displays. Has a plastic frame to hold the glass in place, and these are the leads coming out of the glass soldered to a circuit board. And well, looking at it from the back, here's the back of the glass. Has a glass nipple on it, which is kind of protected here because of the circuit board, but obviously this is the Achilles heel, because if you break this, the gas escapes and the display dies. The connector that goes into the wire harness, and essentially driver circuitry on the back. Transistors, these things run on a voltage differential of 190 volts as set from the factory. One of the tips and tricks is to reduce that voltage from 190 to 170, because it is commonly believed that the display glass will last longer with a lower voltage. Anything goes wrong on this board, everything is replaceable. They're just high voltage transistors and BCD to segment decoders, drivers over here. So everything is fixable, but if the tubes go bad, you can't fix them. And as I mentioned, you can't get replacements for them. So let's see what our alternative is. And here it is. It's the Bally 5x6 digit display kit from Wolfpack Technologies. Not a sponsor. So let's see what's inside. It's a kit. You need to build it. Well, you need to solder it yourself. I think the kit's about $150 for all 5 displays. And let's see. Okay, for complete assembly instructions, go to, so saving some money there, not including them. And we have a bag of connectors and ICs, more connectors and ICs, and even more connectors and ICs. And you guessed it, more connectors and ICs. PCBs, 5 sets of PCBs. This contains a bunch of 150 ohm resistors. And nicely wrapped in paper, we have the 7-segment displays. And there should be 30 of them. 3 times 10. And now, I better go the instructions, because I'm not smart enough to figure this out on my own. And on this kit, if you don't follow the sequence correctly, you can basically solder yourself into a corner, meaning there's a connector I think you can't get into place if you solder a bunch of other things first. So let me go get the instructions. Here are the instructions. Start off with general warnings, parts list and pictures. More parts lists, and start here. Tells you to check the components against the parts list. I want to be bold and trust the supplier. So control board A. Step 1, start with the larger PC board A. Okay. Close enough. And then it basically tells you what to insert where and the order of how to install things in here. The only difference, the only mod I'm going to make to this instruction set is I'm going to use sockets for the ICs. And yes, it may prompt some comments from people who say, hey, it's a pinball machine, you shouldn't use sockets, they're going to come loose. If you put new sockets in, machine pin sockets, for the first few insertions, I mean, yeah, if you're going to keep removing chips from it, it'll wear out the socket, but if you plug in your chip once or twice, you will have a firm grip on the chip and a gas-tight contacts from the chip pins to the socket pins. So that's what I'm going to do. Once we got the sockets in, put a piece of tape over them to hold them in place. Then turn everything around and solder 2 pins on each socket. And the reason I do that is once those 2 pins are soldered, if I need to adjust, if the sockets aren't sitting flush with the board on the other side, I can press on the sockets and heat the 2 solder joints, and the sockets will go neatly into place and be flush with the board, which is what we're looking for. I also tape down the board so it doesn't wiggle when I am trying to solder a joint, which may dislodge the proper position of the sockets. So we'll do this one, this one, and after those are soldered, take off the tape from the board, and we take off the tape that holds the sockets. I think they made it pretty good. You observe they are sitting flush, but what I was referring to earlier is, let's say one end of them is sticking out. You basically heat the pin closest to where the socket's sticking out, heat up the solder on it, and press down on it from the other side. And that'll make it sit flush. Be careful, because when you're heating up these pins, they do get extremely hot, and if you push on it with a bare finger, it will burn your finger if you happen to hit the pin that you just heated up. Then we continue on our merry way and do all of the rest of the pins. Next, we insert 1 resistor, 2 diodes, watching carefully for the polarity. Even though the instructions say that for a 6-digit display these are optional, hey, paid for them, so I might as well use them. And 2 bypass capacitors on the ICs. Why a 3rd one wasn't used, I'm not sure, but got to keep the cost of goods down here. We don't need tape for these because we just bend back the leads on the other side, and that'll hold them in place for us to solder. Next we install headers J2 and J3 and connector, what is it, J1 actually comes in 2 pieces. You just have to make sure they're the same size, but one of them is keyed. You got to make sure that the key, or the one where they cut off the pin, matches the arrow. We put tape on them, and we go to the same procedure as with the IC sockets to make sure that these are flush. Okay, let's not forget to insert the ICs. while making sure that they're in the right place, as outlined in the instructions. Yeah, these aren't going to come out. And again, you know, if you plan on removing them a couple times, you may want to use the cheaper sockets, which are better at letting you remove chips and put them back in a couple times. With these, unless there's something wrong here, these chips aren't going to come out. There you go. Don't forget to cut all the excess leads on the passives. Clean this up with IPA. Well, we'll do that along with the other board later on. And the control portion of the display is done. We now turn our attention to board B, which will hold the actual displays. I've inserted 7 resistors already, bent the leads, and we're going to solder these into place. And not a whole lot more left to be done. Next we need to install J3 and J4. This is the part that fits into the control board. So again, these have to sit flush. The plastic frame has to sit flush against the board, so we need to apply tape, but you already know the procedure. Okay, we're in the final sprint. Well, for this display at least. We put in 6 displays. These also, we should probably tape them down, use the same approach where we solder 2 pins and then straighten them out, but tape across it isn't going to hold them down too well. So since we have a flat surface and they have a rather large flat surface themselves, the way I like to do it is take the board and put it against something flat, like this. So I'm holding it against something flat, and then I lay it down and gently pull out whatever was holding them in place. And now, if they're laying on a straight surface, probably won't. They're pretty well aligned. I mean, we're still going to solder diagonal pins, you know, 2 each. Then turn it around and, you know, press on it with our finger if necessary to straighten them all out, but this will work without tape. A couple things to watch for. Make sure that the decimal points are pointing towards the bottom, towards these connectors. There's a protective film on each of these displays, but don't remove it until we give the solder side the IPA treatment and clean those up a little bit on both boards, and then we should be ready to go to the races. Now we're going to clean the solder side. What we need for that is IPA. I got it in a little spray bottle, an acid brush. Not exactly sure why they're called acid brushes, but anyway. And then what I use is Kim wipes, which are basically very thin paper towels that don't, you know, that don't leave anything, that don't come apart when you get them wet. But if you don't have Kim wipes, just use paper towels, they'll work just fine. And then what we do, so you can see there's quite a bit of flux on here. We'll do a couple of chips in the middle. And again, I probably shouldn't have inserted the chips because those are static sensitive chips. So before you do this, remove the chips. I'm going to take my life in my own hands and just do a small portion here to demonstrate. So let's take this guy here, give him a few squirts, and then, right, then go over it with the acid brush. And that basically picks up the flux. We won't know, of course, until it dries. So let me clean the whole thing and show you what it looks like after it dried. Here's what it looks like after cleaning. I mean, in order for me to get this really clean, I'd have to immerse the whole board. But this is clean enough. Most of the flux is gone, and it's okay. I'm not too proud. I'm going to let it go in like this. I'll clean the other board and we'll finalize assembly of this display. Alright, we now take off the protective covering on each of these. I'll use pliers to grab the edge and pull them off. And then we have to apply, it comes with a bezel. We have to punch these out or remove them. I don't know why they didn't punch these a little deeper, because they're still kind of attached, but anyway, I'll pull the rest of them off, get these guys out, and we'll apply the bezel. Now we come to the hardest part of the whole thing, the last step. Remove the paper backing covering the adhesive from the foam bezel. Carefully line the openings with the LEDs and install as shown below. Well, it just shows you to install them like this. But here's a kicker. Note, the adhesive is very aggressive. Be careful when handling the bezel after removing the paper backing to avoid sticking it to something you didn't intend, or to avoid sticking it not straight. So I guess you know, it's easy to align it like this. Let's see, is there a way I can start peeling off the backing and then just like do one side like this? Nah, I'll just be bold. You can watch me and laugh at me if I mess up. So here it goes. Here goes nothing. No. Oh, I think I got it. Yes, I did. So, make sure it all sticks. We're not covering up anything, except, of course, you notice that we're covering the decimal points, but those are not used. And then we will insert or mate the two boards which means our display should be done. If it fits, of course. Come on. There. And there's our display. And here's the original. Same form factor. This will fit into the same place. We can actually mix and match. We can actually put one of these in and have the other four be the old gas discharge ones. And the reason this works is the boards are supplied with 5 volts, which on the old one is only for the decoder over here, but which powers the entire new board. It only needs 5 volts. And this board simply ignores the 190 volts. So let's put her in the machine. Okay, ready for the big test. I'll let you guess which one is the new one. Which of course, you know, it's obvious here because there's no back glass on it, but it becomes a little... Even with a back glass, you're going to see the difference if you mix and match, but anyway, we'll get to that later. Let's just hit the power and see what it looks like. Oh, they lit up, and seems to be working. Let's run it through the display test. So, yeah, I'll have to review the video, but looking at it with the naked eye, they're very, very, very close. The, let's see, the new one on the top left looks a little softer than the gas discharge ones. But the color, I mean, the color match is amazing. And it looks great. So all I got to do now is spend a couple, 3 hours doing the other 4 displays. And then we'll see it with all its glory, with all new displays installed. So I spent a few hours soldering the rest of the displays. That was a lot of leads to solder, but let's see what it looks like with the back glass on. So there you have it. One thing you will notice that I noticed from my previous shot is you can see flicker in the displays. Now that's only with the in the camera shot. You can't see that in real life, but the reason for that is that these displays are multiplexed or scanned. And what that means, instead of turning them all on with whatever number you want to display, in order to save some hardware I/O, they are turned on once each of the digits is turned on 1/6 of the time. I mean, each of the digit in each display. So the very first time the processor goes through it, it turns on the ones digit for all 5 displays, then the tens digit, then the hundreds digits, and so on and so forth. And in real life, your eyes are fooled into thinking that they're on permanently, which it really does. However, the camera, because of its shutter speed, will show some flicker, which is not something you see in real life. The second thing I noticed in the last shot was when we went into the test mode and it was flashing different digits in each of the displays, the camera kept trying to refocus every time the displays turned on and off. So hopefully now that I turned off autofocus, it won't do that anymore. But here's what the display looks like, and my opinion is that you know, I would definitely give these displays the Artifact seal of approval. No sponsor, no sponsorship here, but they're very nice. They will last, I think they will last a really long time, and I'm able to preserve the gas plasma displays if I ever feel like completely returning this machine to original. Thanks for watching. Do all the good stuff like liking and commenting, and we'll see you next time.